them. Fourth Mass. Participation normalized atrocity. 50,000 spectators watching executions. Eating lunch. Placing bets. Demanding variations. This collective witnessing transformed horror into ordinary afternoon entertainment. Fifth, forcing victims to participate in their own destruction, Ludi Meridiani, requiring condemned to kill each other, achieved psychological contamination beyond physical death. Sixth, symbolic punishments embodying alleged crimes, sexual assault for adultery, burning for arson reveal authorities, operating through logic that method must mirror offense. Seventh, industrial-scale killing, 19. 0 inches, single nomachia, shows genocide logic operating through entertainment framework. Eighth, strategic resistance through maintaining dignity under torture. Felicitas praying for 5 hours can delegitimize persecutors by exposing their brutality. Ninth, different execution methods targeted different populations, citizens versus slaves, religious versus political criminals, sexual versus property offenses, revealing how systematic violence categorizes victims. 10th, the survival strategies that emerge avoiding accusation entirely through strategic invisibility, recognizing when systems are designed to manufacture guilt regardless of actual innocence. Understanding that once you're in arena, there's no reasoning with the machinery. Fleeing early before formal charges. Building networks providing early warning. Documenting atrocities even when participating seems impossible. These aren't just Roman patterns. They're blueprints that reappear throughout history. Medieval European public executions inherited Roman logic, using spectacular violence for social control, optimizing suffering for audience satisfaction, bureaucratizing brutality. The tools changed. Colosseum became town square. Tunica molesta became burning at stake. Damnatio ad bestias became breaking wheel, but underlying mechanisms remained consistent. Subscribe to Medieval Survival Skills, because understanding how Rome industrialized violence for 400 years trains you to recognize when contemporary systems employ similar patterns. The specific methods evolved, but the institutional logic persists, professionalizing torture, optimizing for spectacle, tracking audience satisfaction, forcing victim participation, scaling to industrial killing capacity, documenting while claiming propriety. Aurelia Tertia wearing the burning garment for 15 minutes while crowds ate lunch. Publius Fortunatus torn apart over 90 minutes by animals released in calculated sequence. Licinia Sabina forced to kill stranger before being killed herself. Marcus Stephanus dying as Orpheus in theatrical production he never chose. Lucius Ambustus burning for 45 minutes while 50,000 watched. Flavia Domitilla slowly crushed by elephant on her cousin the emperor's orders. Gaius Bassus drowned with 19. 000 others in staged naval battle. Claudia Felicitas racked for 5 hours because she wouldn't renounce faith, and hundreds of thousands of others whose names weren't recorded, whose files were lost, whose deaths were witnessed and forgotten. They died for entertainment. They died because Rome considered their suffering appropriate spectacle. They died because an empire building roads and aqueducts and libraries also built an industry of human destruction, operating 4 centuries across 3 continents. They died because power unchecked by accountability will always transform suffering into entertainment. because cruelty given institutional form becomes normalized. Because audiences witnessing atrocity regularly eventually find it ordinary. This is what Roman civilization actually was. Not just Virgil and Marcus Aurelius and magnificent engineering, also a system that tracked execution methods for crowd satisfaction, optimized deaths for viewing pleasure, and called it civilization. The stones of the Colosseum are stained with blood of people who screamed while crowds cheered. Remember this when you see the ruins. Remember that 50,000 gathered to watch people burn? Remember that the empire considered this appropriate afternoon entertainment. Remember that documentation meant to demonstrate legal propriety now condemns those who created it. The medieval European public execution tradition inherited Roman blueprints directly. The logic of using spectacular violence for social control, the optimization of suffering for audience satisfaction, the bureaucratization of brutality through professional executioners and legal procedures, the recruitment of populations into complicity through mass witnessing, medieval town square executions burning heretics, breaking criminals on wheels, drawing and quartering traitors followed patterns Rome established centuries earlier. Different tools, same institutional mechanisms. Subscribe to Medieval Survival Skills because learning to recognize these patterns across centuries helps you identify when contemporary systems are following. Historical scripts for industrializing violence. Professionalizing torture, optimizing cruelty for public consumption, and recruiting populations into complicity through entertainment frameworks. The survival wisdom from Rome's execution industry. First, prevention beats endurance. Avoid accusations entirely rather than hoping to survive arena. Second, understand that once you're in the system, guilt is manufactured regardless of actual innocence. Third, recognize that professional torture requires professional opposition, dismantling institutions, not just removing cruel individuals. Fourth, refuse complicity when recruited into mass participation. Fifth, strategic resistance through maintaining dignity can delegitimize persecutors. Sixth, document everything, because recorded atrocities eventually condemn perpetrators. Seventh, understand that systems optimizing violence for entertainment value prioritize spectacle over justice. Rational appeals are futile. Eighth, recognize that forcing victims to participate achieves psychological destruction beyond physical violence. Ninth, build early warning networks and flee before charges formalize. 10th, understand that the distance between civilization and atrocity is measured in justifications we accept for violence against those we've been taught to view as expendable. Remember Aurelia Tertia, 23 years old, who learned what was about to happen to her body only when attendants approached with the burning garment. Remember that her administrative record noted her death provided satisfactory entertainment value. Remember that 50,000 Romans considered her 15 minutes of screaming an appropriate way to spend lunch hour. Remember that this wasn't aberration, but system organized, profitable, sustained for 400 years. Remember that the patterns Rome established keep reappearing: professionalized violence, bureaucratized brutality, entertainment frameworks for systematic killing, mass participation, creating collective guilt, documentation meant to demonstrate propriety, actually creating evidence of crimes. Remember that those who forget how institutional violence operates are condemned to potentially experience it. Those who study these systems gain survival knowledge applicable whenever authority claims the right to inflict suffering for justice, security, or social order. The Colosseum stands as monument not just to Roman architectural achievement, but to what happens when power operates without accountability, when violence becomes entertainment, when populations are recruited into witnessing atrocity until it becomes ordinary. Learn the patterns, recognize the signs, and commit to being among those who recognize danger early and act while action remains possible. Subscribe to Medieval Survival Skills. Remember their names, learn their lessons, and survive.